Aquascaping world, this is Steve Scapes. Welcome back to the biggest English competitive aquascaping channel, hosted by me, Stephen Chong, North America's #1 competitive aquascaper. For long-time subscribers, this is probably an anticipated video. The bread and butter of the channel has long been these deep dives once a year into my contest aquascapes. Recently, we've been doing lots of other content, like the contest calendar updates, where I talk about different workflows, different points of the year, Master Skills series, where we go into deep dives into sets of techniques, and reposts of event content from my travels around the world. So go check those things out. But these ContestScape bids will always be the anchor of the boat. That said, welcome to Grasping, my 2024 contest aquascape. And I'd like to thank my supporting brands, Ultimate Nature System, Life Aqua, and Glue Master, that made this possible. This is going to be a bit of a tough one for me though. World ranking 52 of KIAC and world ranking 50 at CIPS are no small feats against the hundreds of competitors on the global stage and the rising global skill level. I'm happy to return to the top 100 this year of the international contests, but the rankings don't reflect my personal goals as a former multiple-time top 5 aquascaper, nor my personal assessment of the work. The work also is complicated for me because as things really took a turn in ways that I didn't plan. In other words, there's no way to act cool about it. No way I'm going to say things went just as planned. We're a long ways off from my initial inspiration. So I'm hoping to humanize this story by showing some vulnerability. But I'm also very proud of the scape that resulted from it. The title Grasping reflects both the shape of the layout and my personal feelings towards trying to find footing, scaping in the completely new environment of New York. To anyone new watching, though I am an American from the US, I am also a member of the Tokyo Aquascaping Union, and most of my adult life, scaping life, has been in Tokyo. So this is my first time contest scaping from my native country, but very much new to everything in finding a flow, finding materials, figuring out my way around the scaping process in a new environment, and getting used to a new town and new working conditions. But again, big thanks to Ultimate Nature System and Buse Plant, who provided the tank, stand, soil, plants, and much more support to help make those adjustments. As I said, we're showing some humility here and trying to find footing, so I'm going to start the vid off by returning to the channel roots of doing some screen capture demonstration to get my thoughts going. This will mostly be to talk about the ideas behind the scape. So I want to start off the discussion by starting with my own evaluation of the final work. I think it's a great aquascape. Strong, powerful, dynamic. It's one that I'm proud of and one that will stick with me for a long time. A nature aquarium that really pulls out, the things that I value in an aquascape: strong dynamism, motion, underwater feeling. And in a nature aquarium, it's just so vivid with colors and sense of life and sense of underwater space, environment for fish. These are the types of ideas and things that have been highly valued in aquascaping coming out of Amano Takashi's Nature Aquarium and the IPLC. Also, in terms of online response, I wouldn't say that these types of digital metrics are the first thing you should think about in evaluating your work, but it's a hint, it's an extra input. And I'll say that with over 2,600 likes on the initial Instagram post, the amount of engagement I saw on Facebook, shares, bookmarks, etc., it is actually, I hate to say it, but it outperforms my work from last year, the Hawaii mountainscape, that really, really is my favorite work of all time, even now. My favorite personal work. It is also better than the year before, the Maple Aquascape, or competitive with Silent Pool. I want to say that it's not getting the same level of engagement, of course, as when I was World Rank 2 Gold Prize at the IPLC in 2020. But I mean, when you're #2 in the whole world, there's a certain amount of brand engagement that you should expect. Changes things up quite a bit. I think that part of this response is the fact that, as an aquascaper, I tend to switch between traditional and more dynamic, between underwater and terrestrial themes. And so I have a lot of fan base who, first of all, like Masashi Ono a lot, one of my teachers, and also, a set of fans who say that My 2019 work, world rank 15, Amanogawa, Amano's River, is their absolute favorite of my aquascapes. And for that, base, those like traditionalist and underwater, also biotope loving aquascapers, this was a hit. So I the things I want to get through really got through, and the people who love this style of aquascape really loved this work. Also, the response from other top competitive aquascapers, Josh Sim, saw like the earlier stages when I was kind of finding my way and not really sure about things, but he said, "Wow, I can't believe how great this aquascape turned out in the end." I got praise from Juan and also from Luca, this year's IPLC Grand Champion, and Luca mentioned that I'm glad that you didn't enter the IPLC this year. So that's quite the compliment, though. Check out his work. The wave aquascape he made to win worlds for the first time after being in the top 7 so many times. Real big congrats, Luca, on finally reaching the top. So getting back to this aquascape, I think that there's a lot of positive things to say. The things that I really like in the work are like just the dynamism of the lines that I made. Like to have this rushing sense of foreground lines and motion in the front, left to right, strong angle, while also a powerful overflow. Like this is a shape that hasn't really been explored before, and it's it's both left to right, back to front. It's a triangle aquascape at the same time that it is a concave aquascape. And most interestingly, like not only do you have these elements going over and under, but also back. Like probably one of the most interesting aspects of this aquascape. So even as we have these strong over and under elements, at the same time, there are also lines that fall back. In other words, you can tell based on the way that this is constructed that there's another world beyond, outside, both to the back right corner, and everyone tells me that they really appreciate this space above, and I think that that's correct. This is really important to the overall aquascape. Just the sense that this little bit of water surface gives you the feeling that things go beyond. And yet, even though there is this open space here, it's really clear where your eye is supposed to go. The viewpoint in the middle is unmistakable, it's unquestionable, and the blue color of the background in back connects the upper left-hand corner with the blue shading going into the white space in the middle, just like how the red stem plants, the Ludwigia on the back right-hand corner, connect the universe outside of the wood, behind the wood on the right-hand side, from back right-hand corner into the middle. Everything flows together. There are all of these different elements, and yet they all work together to lead the eye through this very dynamic, arranged nature aquarium. This is my first time doing a really traditionalist style nature aquarium. Using some techniques and some ideas from the more progressive diorama style that I'm used to, and yet like those those conceptual ideas and those composition ideas are giving stage, an interesting and dynamic stage, I think, to this scape that is in style much more traditionalist. Also, I really like the vividness of the plants, the different types of Echinodoris. This was originally supposed to be a South America themed aquascape, and the different Echinodoris that like anchor the overall experience, sew it all together, connect it through, and also appear in the reflections, give real character to the overall scene, I think. Unfortunately, like originally I wanted to have in this aquascape like festivum cichlids or some sort of a South American fish that really brought that story home. Like in this, to be perfectly honest, in the stress of overall life and finding my way with my career and my day job as a marketer at IBM, like I just couldn't find time to do networking. I probably should have networked to find a better fish provider or sources online, but I decided that coming in coming close, schedule tight, rather than trying to figure out, a source of fish that I could trust and rely on. I would just rather go check out local fish stores and see what was in stock, what was in the market, and make the best pick. Turned out to be these turquoise rainbows and black neon tetras, and I did the best I could to get them to work together. Not my favorite fish positioning or selection. So in other words, this is an ongoing theme with this aquascape. There's a lot of things I didn't plan and a lot of things that are suboptimal, but parts that I'm really proud of and really happy to see having come together. You can also see another thing I really love about this scape is the flame moss that are used both as highlight plants in the foreground and background, but it's this background where they act as kind of an extra layer of distant water plants, like the different cape-shaped plants that are found throughout the aquascape. These were not originally part of the plan, but a tip from Masashi Ono, seeing this scape in its work in progress stage, was that using such plants would help connect different parts and elements together, also smooth the lines between Echinodoris and other areas. And I think that it really worked well, both in the reflections that you see in the surface, as well as drawing thinner and thinner plant lines into the background and integrating the Echinodoris into the reflections in the midground and foreground. I think that this decision worked really well, and then having flame moss as the very last anchor layer in the very far back to act as if they are very far away Balasnaria gives an extra layer of interest to what is mostly a more close range nature aquarium. Now, this final aquascape, I've mentioned everything that I love about it, and I think all that holds true. Now, all these aspects, while I evaluate them highly and am very proud to have brought them together in a work like this, we're quite a ways away from my initial inspiration. So let me go there. This was the original drawing that I did prior to the creation of the scape. For those who are familiar with my work, I tend to do like several months worth of illustration and artwork in order to find, some ways I want to bring the aquascape together, find my ideas, also do research into different areas. Like, I was really wanting to take inspiration from there's a video, a 360-degree VR video that you can find on YouTube. It's BBC's Predators in Clear Water. I definitely go check that out. It's a really awesome experience, especially if you can do it in a VR headset. But you can see some screen captures on the bottom here that I actually put right next to the drawing as I was doing it, so that I could collect colors and get inspired immediately while I was doing the illustration. To be perfectly honest, this year I didn't spend a whole lot of time doing the concept work for the aquascape, which is different and counter to my general philosophy about how to approach the contest. But pre-creation of the aquascape, yeah, I was in the middle of moving to New York. I had just left Japan, was moving from IBM Japan to IBM New York, moving my family, moving into a new house, finding a place to stay, trying to time the delivery of equipment and all the fundamental things that I would need for an aquascape from Ultimate Nature System. I didn't want to be spending, hours and hours of my time going through research and boardroom, illustration, etc., etc. So in those ways too, I can honestly say that I did not put my greatest effort into this aquascape compared to previous years. Things might have been, less. I knew I wasn't going to have the same time or space to try to be creative or try to be innovative compared to previous years. That said, I was fine with that because I really enjoyed this initial illustration. And for folks who watched my contest calendar videos early in the year, you probably heard me say that I wanted to make 2 aquascapes based on this, and that's correct. So I had 2 120 centimeter aquariums from Ultimate Nature System, and the idea was that I would make two versions of the same aquascape. I would use the same plants, so Echinodorus, Ludwigia, and different types of moss that would be found in both. And one my plan was to make one IPLC version that was a nature aquarium aquascape, and one that was almost a direct recreation of this illustration here, a powerful, dynamic, expansive georama. In the illustration, you can get an even greater sense that the space outside this world to the back right is big and expansive, and that's really what I wanted to do. If I had time, if I had been able to find the time to make that second aquascape. I ended up not being able to bring it together, though I did do a different hardscape that I plan to finish, make a final work. Uh, that said, so I really, really love this illustration, and this illustration um, executes a little bit more discipline than the initial final aquascape in one big way, and the that is the dimensions of the aquascape. So this illustration is much more panoramic than the aquascape that you saw earlier. That's because the actual aquarium that we're working is 120 centimeters by 60 centimeters deep by 60 centimeters tall. So it is an aquascape that gives you a lot of space, top to bottom, front and back to work with. It's an almost ideal work. It's an ideal, it's an ideally flexible aquascape for contest aquascaping. So very much big thanks to Ultimate Nature System, and the craftwork behind that aquarium is fantastic. But if there is one inconvenience to that aquarium, it's that 60 centimeters is quite tall and quite long distance to reach arms into. So unless you're a very tall, very long-armed guy, you're going to have to really get your arms in there. I'm still fairly young, so I wasn't worried about it. I have a stool, I have some long tweezers. I do, I do have to take into mind though, like when you have a deeper aquarium and you're really getting into it, it means that you have to pace yourself and think about your own endurance and your ability to pull through it. Because it takes more work. It takes more time and effort to maintain an aquarium like that. But it means that because you have the 60 centimeters in height, you can raise the water level, you can lower the water level. It gives you a lot more flexibility. And if you lower the water level, you can make this type of broad, panoramic scene that is very popular in contest aquascaping. So if you imagine, instead of having been a 120 centimeter by 60 by 60 layout, it was a 120 centimeter by 60 and 40, or 60 and 50, or 60 and even 60 and 55. And all of that is possible when you have the depth to work with. You can choose to make the aquascape more squarish as in like this shape if you fill the water all to the top, and like the final aquascape was, or more panoramic just by lowering the water level. Because remember guys, nothing in your aquarium is going to be visible unless it was underwater. I was a little bit undisciplined. I did plan to make this type of wide panoramic view, but this year, especially for the IPLC version, that was going to be more of a nature aquarium, my thought process was, I'll let the wood do the scaping on its own. I'm not going to do a huge amount of adjustment or cutting. I'm going to try to let the material become the aquascape that it wants to be in the first one, for the nature aquarium style version of this work. And then when I do the really impactful, powerful one-to-one type of dynamic layout, that I would do in the other aquarium. Now, if you're interested in how to almost perfectly recreate an aquascape like this, I'd recommend checking out my Master Skills Series 2 video, where I go into techniques that you can use to bring almost a perfect replica of what your initial drawing was into the aquascape and recreate it as a hardscape. So that was my plan. I was going to be that disciplined for the second aquarium. Never got there in terms of time. Hopefully next year I'll have more of a sense of pacing, more of a sense of work-life balance, and figure out how to do it. So what I like even more about this initial initial drawing. It takes everything that I mentioned in terms of the strong directional lines, bottom, top, front to back, and out to the back right corner, and it just amps them up to 100 or 1,000 in terms of like magnitude. And this piece of wood here in the middle, which I wasn't able to really recreate in the nature aquarium version, and you can tell it's there. Like if you go back to the original scape, like there is this piece of wood there that gives re-emphasis of that line, but it's not like this. It's not like in the original drawing where that piece of wood is really a crescendo and it's floating, and the shadow beneath it really gives you a sense of that floating sense that underwater sunken pieces of wood give you to make it feel more underwater. So there's a lot in this illustration. Actually, you know what? There's things in this illustration that I don't like as much as the original because, sorry, I mean, there's things in this illustration that I don't like as much as in the final Aquascape, because in the final Aquascape, like the top left, you know, reflection here is just one of the most powerful and interesting parts of the whole aquarium. And that's kind of something that you can't really, you can to a certain degree, like and um, calculate, imagine, formulate in your mind as you're doing this. Like you can see that this is very dark back here. It's not full dark like some of the aquascapes that you saw on the top of the contest results this year that really they clearly like made a huge shadow over the aquarium while taking, like, you take a piece of cardboard, you put it over the back and like really make that shadow strong by getting in the way of the strobes as you take the photo. I only half did that. I, you know, added a little bit but didn't go full black. Whereas like this is a much darker version that I probably would have pursued in a more dynamic, in a really dedicated diorama style work. But I'd say that in this illustration, that top left open space is not doing as much work. It's kind of like just the negative area to let everything else come through. But in the final aquascape, like the plants and their reflection and their, you know, life essence in the ripples is really, you know, hyping up, amping up the living space aura of this work. And these are the types of things where you can't really always calculate out, but you see halfway through and you think about how to emphasis, you know, add even more emphasis to the strong things that the plants are doing. You're having a conversation with the aquarium as you're doing the husbandry for it. You have happy accidents in any art form, but especially in aquascaping where you're working with live plants. They will do something. The fish will do something. The ecosystem of the aquarium will do things that you couldn't have expected, but have the opportunity to make your art even greater if you're open to recognizing them and then finding the way to bring them to the forefront. That said, there are some regrets that I have about the initial drawing that I'd like to do. Like, I still think that this crescendo and this balance of space and lines was so cool, and I regret that I didn't get to do the full diorama version of it. I'm not sure like how I feel about just doing that, because I'm not sure about just going ahead with that plan at some later date, because I feel like now that the original Nature Aquarium version is out and now I'm talking about these thoughts, you know, it might spoil or, you know, hinder the impact of bringing this into reality. But at the same time, there's so much that I liked about this work that I'm going to have to reevaluate and think about it. And actually, after having done the Nature Aquarium version, and even knowing that, you know, for a more powerful, dynamic, full-blown, like diorama version of the Aquascape, I would have more tools and more potential, you know, more techniques that I could bring to bear in order to amp this up. Like, I found limitations and issues in the Nature Aquarium version that will inform, I can definitely use to inform and make this version, the full impact version, better if I ever do decide to pursue it. You know, aquascaping, especially contest aquascaping, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So it's okay sometimes to pocket things and put things in the back burner, let them, gel in your mind, let them um, uh, even want to say like pickle, like stir, just like refine themselves. And one day, if you have it in your mind and you're thinking about those hints and ideas and inspirations, they'll formulate into something even better. I hope that's the case for this one. Another example is my 2018 World Rank 5 Aquascape. Ono-san told me that I hadn't quite gotten the hole in the bottom of the of the tank idea that I wanted to pursue with that. Matthew Maines actually did something like that this year with his KIAC work, Descending. Go check it out. It's an interesting one. But I still think that there's a lot more that can be accomplished in the hole in the bottom aquarium concept. And that's another one. Things that we can stew over and one day eventually revisit to try to make them even better. Hey guys, so this is Steven from the future. When I started recording this, I had no idea that I was going to want to talk for almost half an hour about just the ideas and the concepts and the composition behind this aquascape. Turns out that I had a lot more to say than I thought, and I have even more to say about the hardscaping and techniques with Glue Master Glue and husbandry and the awesome plants that I got from Busa Plants and buying fish at a Petco. So look forward to parts 2, maybe parts 3. This will have to be a series. So please like, comment, subscribe. Thanks again once more to Alt Nature System and Life Aqua for supporting this work, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.